Good evening, respected guests. This event is indeed to commemorate 10 years of the conflict in Syria. It is to make sure that everyone remembers that today, inside Syria, 80% of the population live in poverty. Food insecurity is at unprecedented levels across the country, with over 12.4 million already considered food insecure, and another 1.8 million at high risk. That 12.2 million people do not have secure access to clean water. That's in a country that used to pride itself in having clean drinking water in every single household across the country. That today, 2.4 million children at school age have no access to education. That today, 5.6 million people, of whom 2.5 million are children, are refugees, with another 6.2 million who are internally displaced. Now, those internally displaced have to leave their homes, escaping with their lives, and today they are placing a major burden on already vulnerable communities that they were forced to displace to. Just like the Syrian refugees who had to leave their country to neighboring countries are also placing an equally massive burden on economically vulnerable communities in these countries. It's hardly surprising that these abominable figures represent the worst human displacement crisis since the Second World War. Now, I say that we need to make sure that everyone remembers all that, because clearly many have forgotten. As Ayman mentioned, a recent YouGov survey commissioned by Syria Relief found that only 56% of the people in the UK are aware of the Syrian conflict, never mind the horrific scale of the suffering resulting from that conflict. And if things are not bad enough, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact that unsurprisingly far exceeds its impact on developed countries like Britain. Poverty, economic vulnerability, gender-based and domestic violence, as well as serious mental health issues have all seen monumental rises. Now, we have a recent research project that was carried out by our team on the ground, and it has been widely reported in mainstream media across the globe. That project has highlighted the fact that 99% of the internally displaced population in the region of Idlib suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, that figure drops down to 76% and 74% amongst refugees in Turkey and Lebanon, respectively, but that it's still way too high. Syria Relief as an organization was launched in September 2011, a mere few months after the start of the conflict in March of that year. For nearly 10 years, we have been working very hard to provide aid and support to vulnerable civilians caught in a conflict zone, from food and food security programs, to health and medical aid, to water and sanitation projects, to education and orphan support. Our beneficiaries have exceeded 2.1 million. That's more than 10% of the population of the country. And our annual turnover had rocketed to over £20 million since we started. Education, our largest and probably most important program, currently involves 310 schools, including 4 mobile school units, teaching over 80,000 students. The immediate prospect is not rosy. It's not overtly bright or promising. As I stated earlier, awareness of the gravity of the situation is declining, and people generally get disinterested in any long-lasting man-made crisis. That should not be a reason for us to lose hope or focus. On the contrary, it should be the drive and the motive for each and every one of us to look and explore and think imaginatively about what we can do to remedy this current depressing situation. Yes, indeed, this event is to commemorate 10 years of suffering, but let's not get too focused on what has happened. Let's concentrate on what we can collectively do. First and foremost, we must seek an immediate cessation of all violence, all violence. We must actively aim to start for an end of this crisis, and that can only be through a peaceful, fair, and comprehensive peace process. In the meantime, we must continue to lobby the international community to honor its pledges of support for the vulnerable people of Syria. The ministerial conference in Brussels at the end of this month is the perfect opportunity for the international community to demonstrate that the suffering of the people of Syria from this protracted conflict is still acknowledged and still being considered and still being acted upon. Neighboring countries, as well as some European countries, must make a serious pledge and a firm commitment to refrain from forcing refugees to return to a very dangerous and volatile conflict zone. And importantly, something that has been mentioned by previous speakers, we must all lobby our own government here in the UK to retract its reported plans to cut its budget aid for Syria by a horrifying 67%. We are very proud that the UK has proven over the years to be the largest provider of aid for Syria. This magnificent and much needed support must be ring-fenced. Can you imagine losing 2/3 of that aid? That will have a devastating effect on healthcare, livelihood, education programs, and it will compromise the work of many aid organizations like Syria Relief. Because as our current campaign logo stresses, this is not our history, this is our future. Thank you very much.